Now you should see me.
Okay, that looks good.
All right, there you go. So don't panic. I don't know if anybody, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that's the friendly letters on the book. Anyway, so my talk tonight, dun, da, da, try to speed it up. I guess I should have gone a little faster. Sci-fi versus reality. Which came first? So I'm going to 10 different things I'm going to go through. And what I want is when I'm going to stop and ask a question, do you think sci-fi created it first or did it happen in reality? Any questions? Number 10. So let's read this together. Nitrogen monoxide. This is an actual article that appeared in 1983, an edition of the United Express, a weekly newspaper, reported that dihydrogen oxide had been found in the city's water supply. It first appeared on the internet in Pittsburgh on the Post Gazette. So anyway, here, if you look, actually, I can do this. No, let's not do that. So I'll just bring it over here. Also known as hydraulics. Hydraulic acid, major component of acid rain, contributes to greenhouse effect, may cause severe burns, contributes to erosion of our natural landscape, accelerates corrosion, and the rusting of metals, causes electrical failures, and decreased effectiveness of automobile brakes, has been found in excise tumors of terminal cancer patients. Despite that, it's used as an industrial solvent. It's in nuclear power plants, production of styrofoam, fire retardant, many forms of cruel animal research, distribution of pesticides, even after washing, the product stays contaminated with it. And an additive of certain junk foods and other food components. So, to this question here. Was you read ahead. So the question is, what are you afraid of? A little water? This was actually an article published, I didn't put the date, it was April 1st. It was April Fool's Day. So what was the reaction to that? I'm not going to go through all of these, but here are just some samples that I came across with. I think some of them knew it was a joke, but they took a petition. He had a vote in class. Like that. Okay. Yeah, so 14-year-old in Iraq gathered 43 votes to ban the chemical. And a 59th grader. So, and just a little, I can send it if you want to read all of these. These are pretty cute. The one I like is here's an April Fool's Day joke. Radio personalities actually were suspended because people got upset when they heard that the water company had to tell them the water was fine. So that was pretty funny. Very cool. All right. Actually, I'm going through these little faster than I want to. Okay. Next one. These are all true. 13 creepy real experiments that sound like science fiction, according to the Reader's Digest publication, December 2022. So I'm not going to read all of them, but if you have any one of these that you want me to talk about, anybody have any preference about which one I want to read, which sounds most interesting to you? Yeah, goats producing spider milk. Goats producing spider milk. Okay. Spider silk. I'm sorry. All right. It's in the list here. Hold on. Cows producing human blood, living robots eating biomass. Wait, did I? Oh, that's the second one. Oh, I went too far. Okay, goats producing spider milk. So this is what it says. Scientists have been able to insert spider silk genes into goats. Why? The goat's milk then contains the protein responsible for the silk, which could then be harvested in large quantities. Sorry. Uh, and is 5 times stronger than steel to enhance products ranging from artificial limbs to bulletproof vests. So, any other one here? RFID implants. Okay. Where is that? Two below. Okay. Here it is. RFID implants tracking you where you go. Radio frequency identification chips have been implemented in pets for years to help identify and return them if they are lost. But tracking people, the FDA has approved implementation and implantation in humans, meaning soon prisons, hospitals, and companies could use the chip to track a person's location, medical history, and to grant or deny access to rooms and or documents. Many state correctional facilities are already using the technology to monitor inmates' behavior and location. One more and then I'll continue.
Just a nuance on that. Jails aren't doing implants.
I know, it's
It's like a tag on a clothes.
right.
And I'm assuming we all have cell phones.
Well,
You don't need an RFID or anything like that.
yeah. Right, but you can leave your cell phone at home accidentally. When you want to do something, Which one? Extinct animals. That's the next one down. Okay. Extinct animals brought back to life. Scientists have brought the genetic material from a Tasmanian tiger extinct since 1936 back to life by splicing it into the DNA of a lab mouse. They have yet to successfully clone an extinct animal, although they are working hard on developing a 21st century woolly mammoth, well preserved 10,000 years with 10,000-year-old blood.
Yeah.
And the one I like, lasers can turn the earth invisible. Now, this kind of relates to our speaker from last week. So his technology may actually make this obsolete even before it's completed. So let's see, it's at the bottom here. Whether or not we are alone in the universe remains one of the cosmos' biggest unsolved mysteries. But that hasn't stopped scientists from trying to figure out what to do just in case there are some little green men out there that turn out to be not so friendly. Astronomers at Columbia University assess the way Earthlings could find other planets. When we find a star somewhere out there in the cosmos, we look for tiny dimmings in the brightness, which can indicate that a planet is orbiting it. So astronomers propose that by using lasers to counteract our own sun's dimness, we could hide ourselves from anyone looking. We could then channel not only can not only be theoretical, we do indeed have the technology capable of doing it. Cloaking an entire planet sounds like science fiction to us, but there's a chance it can become reality. So thought that was cute. If you want to go back later, I can do so. A little preface on this one. Starting in 1899, a commercial artist named Jean-Marc Coté and others were hired to manufacture and create a series of picture cards, inserts, according to Matt Noble, who was a writer for the Smithsonian. These images were to predict how life in France would look in a century's time, no doubt heavily influenced by Jules Verne's writings. Sadly, they were never actually distributed. However, the only known set of cards that exist was discovered by Isaac Asimov, who wrote a book in 1986 called Future Days, in which he presented the illustrations with commentary. And I have a few of them here. Maybe you can tell me what you think, what current item they predicted 100 and some years ago came to pass. Well, automated. Roomba. Okay, so it wasn't just an electric vacuum cleaner, which they probably had, but this is Roomba. This is artificial. machine that was imagined that would transcribe spoken language into print. Now, who remembers the first program that came out to do that? DragonSpeak? Remember DragonSpeak? That was it was an attempt. Now, pretty much everything any computer can take your speech and turn it into text. I mean, the technology has been, but again, this was conceived 124 years ago. So that's pretty innovative. Now, is this again, that's science fiction predating reality? We'll have a couple of examples the other way. Another shows video calls imagined with the technology of the day. So they had a projector and they did have phones at the time. So this is an early illustration of a video phone, which really hasn't come to pass, and we've supplanted it with FaceTime and a lot of other. There's no actual, that technology actually we're past that now. This one's interesting. Books being ground up and fed directly into ears of school children. Now think about it for a second. Besides the grounding up of books, what technology do we have now that, well, no, something text to speech. Think about that as text to speech, right? So, well, what are they doing? They're grinding it up and they're talking. So you don't physically have to destroy the books to do it now, but that was kind of cool. Wouldn't you agree that was text to speech technology? Yeah. All right. How about out in the Sam? Anybody have any comments? Auto roller skates. we have again before there were roller skates, but they're more. I was thinking the people movers. What are the segways? Something like that. And finally, the last one still has yet to come to pass. Flying cabs. Not only, but that's in a commercial sense. We have flying cars, but we don't have flying cabs. You can't.
They have them in California. They fly into fire engines.
So, right. Well, that's coming up with. That's not one I included. So, no. There's no going ahead. Just if you want to come up, and say. I had a comment. Dick Tracy's wristwatch. That certainly was ahead of its time as far as and they get smart with the shoe. Yes, they somehow did not find that was a viable. They probably can. They can do it, but I think they had more practical ways of doing it. Okay. In what show was the first universal translator portrayed? Oh. Very good. You got it. Very good. Very good. Very good. I thought I was going to trick somebody. But everyone's going to say Star Trek, and I say, no, that wasn't. We have Doctor Who, not in any particular order. Doctor Who, the telepathic field of the TARDIS automatically translated most comprehensible languages, written and spoken, into a language understood by everybody in the TARDIS. We also had the show Farscape. I don't know if you remember Farscape, right? He got injected with a microbe that translated everything into English for him. Now, he couldn't speak the other language, but it didn't really matter because they all had the microbe in them. So whatever they heard in their own language. I thought that was interesting. Men in Black. Now, the thing with that is we weren't allowed to use it here because the Earth people's minds were too primitive to they couldn't handle it. I remember that. Star Trek here. Right, the universal translator. In Star Trek folklore was designed under the Star Trek Enterprise by Ensign Hoshi Sato. I don't know if we've watched Star Trek Enterprise at all. So she's credited for coming up with the universal translator. But what about in real life? Well, right now there are several of them, but Microsoft, that's Microsoft's symbol for the Universal Translator. Some of the key features of the Universal Translator text translation. The app allows users to enter text in one language and see it translated into another. Features useful for translating signs, menus, and other written material. Speech translation. I don't know if anybody's put it onto their phone. I've tried it. It actually works fairly decently and rather quickly, I was to say. Right now, they can translate up to 60 languages, including the popular languages Spanish, French, Chinese, and Japanese. I found one of these Spanish-speaking channels, and they talk too fast. But sometimes it'll translate half a sentence, and then everybody's talking over each other. So it really, yes. Can it? Probably if it's from Microsoft, it can probably translate Klingon. Yes, I'm sure that's one of the ones that they probably put in there.
How about Yiddish?
I don't know. That's a good try. Well, put the app, try it out yourself. It's free to download. I'm sure 60 is a lot of languages, so I mean I'm sure there's one that it can find. How are we doing here? All right. Driverless cars. Okay. Where's my driverless cars have been used in movies and television for a long time. Can you name some? Okay. That's your money. Oh, you stole that one from me too. What? Well, not iRobot, but yes. But
True Lies.
True Lies. True Lies.
Stephen King's.
Okay. Well, no, I didn't. Though not in my list, but that's a good guess. That's a good choice. Which is okay. No, here are the ones that I came up with. I'll start off with. Okay. I have a robot. I have Ender's Game, Minority Report, Fifth Element, Demolition Man, Total Recall. That's probably a famous one. Knight Rider, right? You said that. That was very good. Batman, remember a couple times he called the car, it drove itself. My Mother the Car, and Forbidden Planet. That's again. So my question: what are the examples that you saw? It was driverless cars first invented in science fiction, or did somebody in reality have a driverless car before this? Who says science fiction? Raise your hand. Okay. Who says in reality? Well, you, sir, would be right. That's not cheating. Residents in New York City in the summer of 1925 were greeted with an unusual sight, a driverless vehicle ambling down Broadway. The modified, I said, not autonomous, just no human at the wheel. Well, so it didn't have to be autonomous. The modified Chandler, dubbed the American Wonder, was the work of a Francis P. Udina, a former U.S. Army electrical engineer. The American Wonder received radio signals via an antenna that controlled its speed and direction. A second vehicle containing the car's operators trailed just behind it. The car could even honk its horn. While a glimpse of the future was intriguing, it ended somewhat ignobly when the American Wonder careened into a car containing a bunch of photographers. But it came up with a few of them that I didn't think of. I could have gone on for a long time.
Think they were driverless cars were the 80s. In fact, in the 80s, when children were going
Well, there was, I'm sure, but I'm saying this is the first instance, unless you know of some science fiction.
was featured out.
Yeah. So where does fiction have it? for 1925. I didn't come up with anything. I thought like, the Forbidden Planet was the earliest that I came across that intentionally was talking about driverless.
Technically, it wasn't driverless.
Well, but it says not autonomous. So I played a little trick on you with the word. I said driverless, not autonomous.
Who made the first synthetic liquor? Oh, that was Forbidden Planet.
That was for me. No? Well, that's good. You hear that?
Ancient rocket server. That's not it.
So treadmills as a power source have originated in antiquity. Treadmills for punishment were introduced in 1818 by an English engineer named Sir William Cubitt, who was sort of a miller, the son of a miller, sort of a son, I can't read. Noting the idle prisoners at the Bury St. Edmunds prison, he proposed using their muscle power to cure both their idleness and produce useful work. The first treadmill for training purposes was patented in June of 1913. The picture here is a treadmill from 1923. This is not the question, whether or not it was in science fiction yet. This is the Pacemaster 600. Well, let's see, so I'll give you a little hint. Well, my question is, in science fiction, and I'll use that term loosely, so I'll give you a little broader area you can think about. For home use, was the use of a home treadmill used here in the Pacemaster 600 or in science fiction? Who says science fiction? Who says in reality? You gotta raise your hand to one of them. I said, I'm talking about just the case. That is the first home use, home marketed treadmill. I'll give you a little extra hint. 1968. Okay. Which sci-fi? Did you look ahead? He is right. It's the Jetsons. Now, technically, it wasn't a treadmill for people; it was a dog walk, but it was the personal, and it was outside their property. So I counted. Now, what advantage does our modern treadmill have compared to his? It has handlebars. So he had handlebars, he wouldn't be going around in a loop. But the first patent, again, I said, was in June 17th, 1913. The history of this is William Staub, a mechanical engineer, developed the first consumer treadmill for home use. After reading a 68 book by aerobic author Kenneth H. Cooper, Cooper's book noted that individuals who ran for 8 minutes 4 to 5 times a week would be in better physical condition. Staub noticed that there were no affordable household treadmills at the time, and he decided to develop one for home use. In the 60s, the first treadmill he called was the Pacemaster 600. When he finished it, he sent the prototype to Cooper, who found the machine's first customers, including sellers of fitness equipment. So I thought, I didn't, unless somebody knows of any other instance earlier about any use of a treadmill, because the other ones you could see are rather bulky and they weren't, you had to go to a salon or something and with the belts and the whole, Other things that the Jetsons predicted were Zoom meetings. I mean, talking to his teleconferencing with the doctor. That's pretty popular right now. FaceTime and some online interactive classes. So I have the mirror in the wall right. So the Jetsons premiered in 1962. The show writers, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, imagined what the future might look like in 100 years. So they created George Jetson, the dad of the future, to handle the trials and tribulations of the nuclear household in the year 2062. And they set the date of birth for George, July 31st, 2022. So if he were in our universe, he'd be a little over 1 year old today. Come out there as George Jetson. Go find him. Anyway. So which shows do you think predicted more things about the future? The Jetsons or Star Trek? Oh, here we have four plus the treadmill plus, I don't know. I think the Jetsons predicted a few more things. Star Trek, I know, it had the Bluetooth and it had the cell phone with the communicator, the handheld, but that was, yeah, but these technologies, well, I mean, cell phones were out there already. They were just, he just compacted them down. So I don't know.
They had a cell phone earpiece. They also had their
That
transporter and transporter.
okay. We have a working transport. Okay, unless you know something we don't, you have you're a personal transporter someplace. Is that how you got here today? Is that? Again, I can't fool anybody. You're getting my little hidden gems. I thought I'd stump somebody, but no. Okay, so we're getting down to there. So anybody tell me where this quote comes from? In her ears, the little seashells, the thimble radios, tamped tight and electronic, oceans of sounds of music, of talk and talk coming in and coming in on the shore of her unsleeping mind. Yeah? Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451. So other things that Bradbury predicted, or some of the things he predicted, were 24-hour banking, audio earbuds with the seashells was line. I found that out there. I don't know if that's what he had in mind. Electronic surveillance cameras and listening devices in the form of a robot dog that would sniff around your house and recording conversations. And I think today they're called Google, Siri, and Alexa. So, and you have one in every room, so it doesn't really, it's effectively the same thing. Anybody think of anything else that it's been a long time since I read this book. Well, there's another thing.
Entire walls of video there in the book too.
Will I say that again? Can you hear?
Some people can.
Who was talking?
Oh, it's John. I recall also they had in the house they had an entire wall that was video. It was a video display.
Well, funny you should mention that because that's not what it is. No, okay. This was the earbuds. Now basically they took a phone and they took apart the speaker part and the ear part. This is how an operator in the 1880s, switchboard operator, that was the original headset. So it weighed over 10 pounds. It featured one earpiece that was attached to the phone and a large microphone resting on her shoulder. The telephone operators were doing it before carrying around. It was like carrying around a small boom box. Before that was cool. Back now, we said that science fiction predicted a lot of things. This is 1981, the first earbud. So back in 1981, a French engineer, 1891, I'm dyslexic. I say things backwards. I have verbal dyslexia, excuse me. In 1891, a French engineer named Ernest Mercator patented what he would call the bi-telephone, which would prove to be the first recorded version of an in-ear headphone, lightweight and portable. It closely resembled our in-ear modules today and quite good considering it was about 130 years ago. even suggested using rubber covers to protect the ear from friction while using them. Of course, back in the late 1800s, the use of earbuds and headphones for music listening was far off, and that technology was limited to the telephone. So if you thought that science fiction came up with it first, you'd be wrong. You would be wrong. I came across that at the last minute saying, oh, I said, oh, they're going to be science fiction. And I said, wait a minute. No, I actually said, oh, I guess I got that wrong too. Yep, let's go. All right. Everybody having fun? Anybody have any thoughts? Any comments? Here's the thing that we're talking about. This is going to be another. So the writing of, there's a few facts about Fahrenheit 451. He didn't come up with this story right away. Back between 1947 and 48, he wrote a short story called Bright Phoenix about a librarian who confronts the chief censor who burns books. An encounter he had with the police in 1949 inspired him for the short story called The Pedestrian. In The Pedestrian, a man going for a nighttime walk in his neighborhood is harassed and detained by the police. In the Society of the Pedestrian, citizens are expected to watch television as a leisurely activity, a detail that obviously was included in Fahrenheit 451. Elements of both Bright Phoenix and The Pedestrian were combined into a novella called The Fireman and published in 1951. And Bradbury was urged by his publisher, Stanley Kaufman of Ballantine Books, to make it into a full-fledged novel, which he did in 1953. The year that it was published, that was the year that was published. So the question, now this is where it's going to get a little tricky. Which came first, Fahrenheit 451 flat screen TV or a practical exploration of flat screen TVs in real life? Not that that was produced. So Bradbury came up with the idea first, and then somebody later said, let's see if we can invent something like that, or was somebody already working on, or just happen chance. So who says science fiction? Can't fool you, huh? Who says reality?
Steve, is rear projection flat TV?
Flat screen, well, I'm saying flat panel. Let's say a flatter panel TV. But yeah, not necessarily, I don't know, rear projection. But no, rear projection is not a flat panel. I'm talking about something that would be thinner. Well, in the book, he calls it, they call it the wall. You know, it was so big that they called it the wall. Obviously, that's not a whole wall. Let's say, all right, for argument's sake, let's say somewhat rear projection. Not rear projection, but no, I mean, the width of it didn't have the cathode ray behind it. Okay. So minus the width of the TV minus the cathode ray tube behind it to project. So anyway, I confused everybody, so I'll just so let's see. So today's largest TVs are what, 7 feet or more? Nowadays, I'm not even sure how big they're getting. So the most prophetic trend of Fahrenheit 451 technology, according to the book, was just the dehumanizing effect it had on the modern culture. The characters in the novel would suffer loneliness, isolation from watching the wall's mindless programming. Again, but TV was already out, so the form of it you're looking at didn't really make a difference. So the question is, all right, so we asked the question. So the first engineering proposal for a flat panel TV was by General Electric in 1954 as a result of its work on radar monitors. The publication of their findings gave all the basics of future flat panel TVs and monitors, but GE did not continue with the R&D required and never built a working flat panel at the time. First production of the flat panel was the Aiken tube, developed in the early 50s and produced in limited numbers in 1958. This saw some use in military systems and as oscilloscope monitors, but conventional technologies overtook it, and attempts to commercialize it for home use didn't work out too well for them. So,
We're still using CLTs.
well, no, they were trying to develop a true flat panel display, but the Philco Predicta still used the cathode ray tube, but the way they set it up, it narrowed it down. So I guess it was projecting the cathode somewhat. But no, but anyway, Ray Bradbury came up with it before they actually started working on it. Okay. I said, listen to my question carefully. So the first, it could be. I thought I was rather clear about it. So the first flat panel TV was launched in '58. The predictor was commercial failure. They called it a flat panel TV, but it really wasn't. In '64 was the plasma display TV was invented in 1964. So that's when I guess when you got the first true flat panel. Sure.
Going back to the 1930s and 40s. In the Wizard of Oz. The pale attention to the 100. The children, that the wizard was projecting his.
Okay, you want to come up and take, because you found an example earlier than I could find. That was very good. If you didn't hear, he said, was that a flat panel? That was a flat. So he said in the Wizard of Oz, they displayed a flat panel television. Okay. Well, then maybe my example still stands, because however you answer the question, you're wrong. This is from the movie. Have you seen this movie? This is a movie called Dial 1119. He's
Yes, really good.
it,
Even before they had
right. Well,
911.
now hopefully it'll work over the internet, but I can't tell it as well as the gentleman.
I'm Eddie Muller, welcoming you to Noir Alley. We're stopping in for a pop at the local bar can have consequences more dire than a watered-down martini, as you're about to discover in Dial 1119. And Dial 1119 makes a point, probably at the behest of MGM executives, of ridiculing the invasion of the idiot box, particularly in a public place. People watching this film during its initial release must have been flabbergasted by the sight of a 4-foot by 3-foot flat screen TV above the bar, since no such thing yet existed outside the MGM prop and special effects departments, and it wouldn't for another 47 years.
TV and why would it be front projection or rear projection? You can't tell from there.
Well, because they said it was in the movie, he makes a note about this TV that, yeah, and all the money he spent getting it set up. And don't worry, he pays for it. He explained he gets killed early on, so don't worry about it. No, he said it in the movie. You saw the movie?
Yeah.
I know it's a nice psychological thriller.
Before we had
911.
911.
Right, that was
Number.
exactly, yeah. Before 911, they had this made up dial, not 1119 back in the 50s. When was 911? In the 60s, late 70s, the mid 60s, I think. So again, that was also very good. That's another point. Yeah, it's it's an interesting psychological piece. So occasionally. Number 2. Can you name the book or movie that predated the iPad? Where's all my Hold on one second. In 2011, an unusual piece of evidence was presented in court in a dispute between two technology giants, Apple and Samsung, over the latter's range of handheld tablets, which Apple claimed infringed on their patent design. Might have remembered that, which in the end, Samsung lost the case to that. But as part of their defense, they introduced, quote, a still image from a clip from Stanley Kubrick's 2001 Space Odyssey, showing Gary Lockwood looking at a somewhat interesting flat panel per tablet. Anticipating the digital newspaper magazines of today, the 2001 production team saw the newspad as featuring instant access to a range of popular periodicals, long lists of image, publication-specific headlines for the year 2001 were conceived, and related news stories and features typed out in full. Kubrick's team wrote to the publications in question, including the New York Times and Life, seeking their permission to include their brand and the mock editorial in their newspad. In the letter dated December 15th, 65, from Kubrick's collaborator Roger Karras to Joseph F. Kern, the publisher of Popular Mechanics, explained how the newspad would work. In one sequence aboard the spacecraft involved in deep space probe of two astronauts using their IBM newspad, which I thought was interesting. The news projecting device would enable space travelers to have access to Earth's news via radio projection. It's an item of hardware logically anticipated for a period 36 years from now. We are working with IBM, of course, and using their technical assistance. In the sequence involved, the astronaut pushes a button which causes the index of 200 lead periodicals to appear on the screen. At various times, the buttons would be depressed that would cause individual indices of 5 of these publications to be projected. The 5 periodicals selected were Sports Illustrated, Life, Scientific America, Popular Mechanics, and the New York Times. So I thought that was rather interesting. And they did go and write all the article, write full articles for each of those, not knowing which one they were going to be using at the time. So even back then, but just the concept of an iPad, I thought that was pretty good. So we're down to number 1, drum roll. Okay. Now, I don't know if you can read the bottom there. I'll go over it in a little bit. So let me go to the top here. Come on. Let me read the first paragraph of this book. His physical superiority, however, was nothing compared to his gigantic brain. He was Ralph 124C41 plus, one of the greatest living scientists and one of the 10 men on the whole planet Earth permitted to use the plus sign after his name. Stepping to the telephone on the side of the wall, he pressed a group of buttons, and in a few minutes, the faceplate of the telephone became luminous, revealing the face of a clean-shaven man about 30, a pleasant but serious face. Now, interesting things about that. Anybody have any guess as to who the author is? And all right. Hugo Gremsbecker or Hugo Gremsbeck, remember? You never heard of the Hugo Award for science fiction? So Hugo Gremsbeck had started a magazine. Let me see if this is. Come on. Wait, I should be frozen up again. Why is this not going? There we go. He was a Luxembourg American editor, magazine publisher. His publications included, and I'll save that for later. His contributions to the genre as publisher were so significant Along with the novelist H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, he is sometimes called the father of science fiction. In his honor, the annual awards presented at the World Science Fiction Convention, named the Hugos. Gernsback was of Jewish heritage, emigrated to the U.S. in 1904, and later became a citizen. He was also a significant figure in the electronics and radio industries, even starting a radio station, WRNY, and the world's first magazine, published the first magazine about radios, electronics and radio, called Modern Electronics. He died in New York City in 1967. The cover you see here is this 12-part series that he published in his magazine of Modern Electrics. Started in April of 1911 and ended in March of 1912. On the cover of this one, you can see what looks like a telephone, even though it's a video phone. But what's interesting about that, I don't know if you can see it over here, push button. A push button phone. It's a push button. Didn't you hear what I was saying? He says he pressed the buttons on the phone. Right. So the rotary dial was patented in 1892. The holes for the rotary dial didn't come about till 1904. And the first push button phone was in 1963. So I think he was a little ahead of his time. Let's see what else. Yeah. I know.
Those kind of weird, Steve, that. Really interesting. What happens is, they go so lots, when they think that it's stop their records, and they don't say anything. They don't say anything.
So
They feel like. Or try to make things that. I mean, make sense.
Well, in his defense, he started out publication. He had 2,000 subscribers. At the end, I think he had about 50,000 subscribers. So still wasn't a tremendous success. But let's see. So let's go on to the next one. Yeah, he in his own words, he says, as the story developed from month to month, there were age-old scramble to beat the deadline, but somehow or other, I was always able to make it under the duress, finishing the installment 3 or 4 in the morning on the last day. The literary quality suffered painfully under such continuous tour de force every month. There can be no question somehow the scientific and technical content came through unscathed most of the time. So into that, had a nice ego to go along with this. But I think, yeah, you would have to. So. So this is 1963. So what does that look like to anybody? Anybody have any? No, it's his television goggles. Virtual reality. So I'm assuming that was an actual working model. So let's more about the story. The Ralph 124C41 Plus, early science fiction, 12-part serial in Modern Electrics. It began, like I said, we covered all that. While it pioneered many ideas found in later science fiction, it was critically panned for inept writing, contains a play on words meaning, the title meaning 124C for one another. I don't know. So anyway, about the book. So in the introduction to the first volume of Science Fiction Plus, dated March of 1953, Gemsback called for patent reform to give science fiction authors the right to create patents for ideas without having patent models, because many of their ideas predated the technology needed to develop the specifications for their ideas. Obviously, they didn't go very far. You just can't patent an idea without something. But I thought it was pretty funny. So he created the publication Modern Electrics in 1908. The magazine was initially intended as a mail order for radio parts and to promote the amateur radio hobby. but it later became a vehicle for technology-based fiction stories. Again, his 12-part installment of his book was the first. Circulation, like I said, started around 2000, increased to 52,000 in 2011. In 1908, the magazine announced a wireless registry listing radio owners and their call letters and the type of equipment they own. That's still here today. The magazine was sold in 1913, and it became, then he started another one called Modern Electrics and Mechanics. That was around until, I don't have the year it was around to, but he sold that one and basically gave up on the electronics part of it. Oh, no, in 1926. So in 1926, I'm sorry, then he went to the Electrical Experimenter, and then in 1926, Amazing Stories. So now in the novel here, he concludes things he invented were microfilm, vending machines, jute boxes, which are kind of both around, satellites, space flight, tape recorder, artificial cloth, television with channel surfing, as well as remote control power transmissions, video phone, transcontinental air service. Now, again, this is 1911, so planes were just barely getting off the ground. Talk about in sound movies, synthetic milk, voice printing. Also contained the first accurate description of radar. That was the quote, if you had a chance to read it. According to Arthur C. Clarke, in his non-genre novel Glide Path, quote, a pulsating, polarizing ether wave, if directed on a metal object, can reflect in the same manner as a light ray reflected from a bright surface. Oop. Anyway, so thanks for all the fish. Thank you, thank you, thank you.